Yes, sir. You can see the slides.
Okay.
So before we start, Gaurav, can you confirm if we are live? Okay. Okay. So good evening, everyone. Myself, Harshit Gupta, the lead organizer of Hackofiesta, the hackathon by IIIT Lucknow. So today is the first session of Hack Talks. Hack Talks is where technology experts talk about technologies and how we can use them to the best of our capabilities. So today we have Mr. Santosh Yadav. He's a Google developer expert for Angular. He's a GitHub star, an OAuth ambassador, and he's a developer advocate. So he'll be talking about Angular and how we can use the Angular to the best. So Santosh sir, you can continue with the talk.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, hey everyone. Thanks for joining. And uh, you already know me now, so thanks for the introduction. Today I'll be actually introducing you to Angular. We will go through, how you can actually get started with the Angular, and we will build a small app where we will connect the API and we will fetch the data from one of the built-in API. I'll be using a fake API, which is called JSON placeholder. I'm sure many of you may know about this. So this is an website where it gives you some fake data which you can use for your demos and all the stuff. So this is the API which will connect and will fetch the data. But of course, meanwhile, while actually going through that, we will learn about the basics of Angular, which you may need to build your application. So let's not waste more time and let's go ahead and get started with Angular. So let's see. So there are a lot of different libraries and component framework which exist in the market. So why Angular? So Angular has one advantage. It's actually a framework, and it is built actually thinking about productivity. So it's like in case you want to build some POC faster, or in case you want to build an application which you should be able to maintain and release in long term. So I think Angular is the best choice, and a lot of enterprises actually use Angular for the same reason, because they want like new developers to be onboarded easily. They don't want to waste a lot of time teaching them, because most of the Angular application which you see on anywhere, they almost use same structure, because Angular has a fixed structure. This is the way to follow, and that's why it is a preferred choice for Angular for enterprises as well, because they don't want to like onboard a new person, train them for next 3 months so they get comfortable with the architecture and everything. It's not so. On Angular you will find, okay, everything is same and you can just start working. It's easy to actually add new features, do refactoring, easy to upgrade. So most of the Angular applications are always updated to the latest version, just because it is so much easy to do that. You just need to run a command, single command, and it will take care of your migration from previous version to the next version. So let's see, what is the prerequisite. Of course, you need Node.js installed, you need a VS Code or any editor of your choice, and you need to be aware of a little bit about TypeScript. I'm sure most of you might be learning TypeScript, or you know TypeScript already. I mean, uh, now if everyone is moving to TypeScript, no one is actually doing JavaScript anymore. Even React, who everyone is actually writing TypeScript. So when we talk about Angular, right? So this is something which you might see that, oh, this is the logo and this is what Angular means. But in reality, the Angular is not this much. Let me show you what Angular is. So Angular comes with a lot of tools already available for you. So it comes with uh, uh, CLI. It comes with APIs to build your own CLI or build something on top of CLI. It comes with unit testing framework. It comes with forms. It comes with routing. It comes with HTTP module to fetch the data. It comes with its own template engine. It comes with ability to support SSR. It comes with ability to create PWAs as well, and there are some amazing feature. And we will see few, of course. Uh, as I'm just introducing Angular to you, I'll not be going into more detail, not the advanced stuff. I'll just do the basic and minimum you need to learn right now to get the data from an API, because that's what you will be doing most of the time, right? Whenever you use any technology, or any front-end framework or library, what is the end goal? You need to just go ahead and get the data or save the data to some API, and probably you will be the one who will be responsible for that API, or the API is already available. In our case, the API is already available. We just need to fetch the data. So let's see what is there, what exists inside the Angular framework. So it has built-in module for forms. So for forms, you don't have to use any other library. It has inbuilt routing. You don't have to use any other library for routing as well. It has pre-configured unit testing. End-to-end testing support has been dropped because there was an end-to-end testing framework called Protector, and Angular team decided not to maintain it anymore because it was outdated. It was created back in 2010 or 11, and it was not easy to maintain, so they dropped the support. And you can actually build your own tools on top of Angular CLI as well. So in case you want to, it has built-in support to create PWAs, built-in support for SSR and pre-rendering. It has built-in support for localization and IIT, which is internationalization, and it has built-in support for dependency injection. And there is a component library which you can always use, which is called Angular Material. Dependency injection is one of the, I would say, uh, great feature which is not available with most of the frameworks. Angular is one of the framework which supports dependency injection, and it is, I think, one of the selling point for Angular. And of course, we are going to see dependency injection as well once you move ahead. And there are a lot of features, so I'm not going into more detail anymore. So let's go ahead and get started. So what you need to create to create a new application using Angular. So Angular comes with its own CLI. So it's called Angular CLI, and you can install Angular CLI by using the first command, which is npm install and @Angular CLI -g. So right now, I think I already have the latest version installed, but just to see, let's see ng version and zoom in. So currently the version of Angular CLI which I have installed is 13.0.1, and the latest version should be 13.10 or something, or 13.1.3 something. So let's install the latest version. So I can just do npm install @angular /cli-g. So this will update my global version which is available, and it will just install the whatever the latest version which is available. And I can execute this command called ng from anywhere after doing this. So let's see. So yeah, it's done. And it says, let's see which version is installed now. And let's do ng-hyphen version again. And it says 13.3.3, as I said, 13.3 point something. So 13.3.3 is the latest version which is available now. And to create a new application using Angular CLI, let's go back to the slides again. You can do ng-new. So ng-new is a command to create a new application. So let's go ahead and do that. That's ng-new and my application name. So I will say this is, what should I name it? And just a second. Let's talk. Say HackTalk. And it will ask you a few questions. So it is right now saying, would you like to add Angular routing? I'll say yes, routing, I need it in future. Which kind of styling you want to use? It supports Sass, less CSS and CSS. So let's choose CSS, and now it will create a new application for us. So everything ready, pre-configured for us. So we can start building on top of it. So like hardly took 2 minutes, and now it is installing the packages from npm for us. So it will install all the packages which is required to run our application. So let's go back meanwhile to the slide and let's see. Now, to once we create a new application, of course, what's the next step? So generally we will serve the application locally and see how it looks like. We will make some changes and see how the changes are reflected or not, or how changes looks like. In case you want to make some styling changes, or you want to add some extra HTML tags or extra screens or extra views or extra pages. So you need to go ahead and see, okay, how those changes looks like. So to do that, you have a command called ngserve. Ngserve will actually run a local server. Angular by default uses port 4200 on your local machine to run your local server. In case 4200 is not available, it will just look for any other free port which is available. And during Angular, I mean during like creating your application, you may need to create new component, new services. uh, there is a command, so you don't have to create any files manually. You have to just run a command called ngg, and it will give you a list of things which can be created using Angular CLI itself. So it will give you option to create components, it will give you option to create services, it will give you option to create interfaces and a lot of stuff. And finally, once you are done, like you made all the changes, you created your application, the end result is of course your production build, which you need to deploy somewhere. I mean any server, right? So as it's a JavaScript, you can actually go ahead and deploy it anywhere, it doesn't matter. It just, the server just needs to support the JavaScript, because the output of your Angular application is bunch of JavaScripts and one single HTML file. So to do that, you can actually go ahead and run ng build hyphen prod. And due to a lot of issues earlier, developers not deploying the production build, now Angular has made a change. So when you run ng build, by default, production build will be created. So remember, there is a difference between production build and development build. Development builds are not minified, and production builds are minified, and which should be deployed on the server. I mean, and it's hard to debug because everything is like replaced with some minified version of your code. So this is what you can do with Angular CLI. So if you see this Angular CLI, what it can do for you is you can start a new application and you can build your new application and many more. Actually, Angular has some support for some of the providers, for example, Netlify, GitHub Pages, where you can actually deploy your application from the CLI itself. So you don't have to leave the CLI. You can say ng deploy and choose whatever the provider you want to. There are a few providers for which the integration is available, and you can use those providers. It is listed on the Angular's official documentation, and just deploy your application from CLI itself. So from creating the application to deployment of your application, everything will be taken care by Angular CLI. You don't have to leave the CLI. So that's what CLI offers to you. And let's see if our application is created. Yes, it is. And let's move on to this folder and let's open the code. So if you see, this is how your application looks like. I mean, of course, front end is too much easy, right? So you don't have a uh, lot of magic happening, which is not true, of course. So there is a lot of files which is required to run this Angular application, and src is the folder where we will be writing our code. So you can see, okay, this has src app and some bunch of files. You can read about it on the official Angular website. It has, of course, introduction about what are these files and what these files do. Right now, let's go ahead and run this application. So we said, okay, there is a command called ngserve, and I can pass a flag called -o, which is for open. So what this flag does is it will build your application locally, and it will serve it on your default browser. So whatever default browser you have set, it will just start the application on that particular browser. So here it is. My default browser is Chrome, and it started this application. So let me just do F11, and you will be able to see this localhost 4000 here. And this is the default page, which is created by Angular. It is not created by us. It's default template, which Angular has. Talking about template, this is the next thing which we are going to talk about. Any front-end framework or library has their own template engine. So if you go to React has JSX, Vue has Vue. And if you go to, let's say, Svelte has its own template engine, right? So everyone has their own template engine. Angular, of course, has its own template engine, but it's just HTML. So there's no much magic happening around. You don't have to understand how JSX works, or how the uh, template engine of Vue works. It's just HTML. You just need to understand, or you just need to be aware of HTML, and that's it. That's the thing which we need to do. But once you understand the HTML, there are a few things which you need to understand. Why we'll be creating these views? Why we'll be creating this front end application? And the answer is easy, right? Because we are getting paid for it, right? So of course that's true, right? We are getting paid for it. That's why we are creating it. Otherwise, why I will create the front end application, right? And companies, why companies are doing it? So companies are doing it because they want to see some information on the front end, which of course they can sell to the end customers. For example, if it's an e-commerce application like Amazon or Mintra, what they are doing. So they have some products they are displaying on the portal, and they have some bunch of actions you can buy. You can add it to your wish list. All those functionalities are available. But what? How they are happening? Because we are able to bind some data on the HTML. So let's try to understand how you can actually bind that data on the HTML, because that's the basic. That's the basic which you need to understand while working with any framework or any library, right? So if you go to React, you need to understand how to bind your values, which is coming from somewhere, to your JSX syntax. In case you're using Foo, you need to understand how to bind that values using Foo. So let's try to understand how you can do it in Angular. So let's go back to our application. And currently, the HTML which we saw is actually defined here, app component.html. And right now, let's say hello world, and let's save it. Let's go back to our application. Mhm. And I'll just move. Okay. Yeah. So you can see you have hello world available here, right? So, okay, we figured out that, okay, whenever we make changes, we just need to save these changes to reflect whatever values which we have on our HTML. But right now, okay, I mean, hard coded this value. I can just use the h1 tag and move this inside this h1 tag and save again, and the values will be reflected back. How to do binding? So let's go ahead and define some variables. So in Angular, if you will be creating components. Let's try to understand what components are. I'm sure everyone knows HTML. What you do in HTML, you have some tags, right? For example, h1, div, span. So you create some bunch of, or you use some bunch of HTML tags. The component, when we talk about components are actually your own user defined HTML tags. Go to any technology, any framework, components concept remains same. So components, when we talk about components, it's an HTML tag which you can create and use. So Angular already have a default component defined for us, which is app component. So the selector property, which you can see here, which says app root, this is an HTML tag. React uses different syntax and Vue has different syntax. Angular says whenever you are defining any any component, have a prefix, because if I just say root, it's possible that there might be an HTML tag called root. So to avoid this conflict, Angular says always use a prefix. So let's do one thing. Let's create our own component and use that to display some information. So to create a new component, as I said, you don't have to do it manually. You can run a command called ngGenerate, which is G is short for generate. And then I can say component, which is again, there is a short name called C, which is alias for component. And then you can give a component name. So I can say, okay, this is a product component, let's say. Now you will see a folder is created. There is a product component which is created. There are 4 files which you will generally see. Let me just go through it so you understand what we are doing. So this is your component.ts file. This is like your controller. Like this is your let's say backend code where you will be writing your entire logic entire logic, whichever you write in JavaScript, you will be writing it in TypeScript. So this is where you will be writing your entire logic. You will probably write code how you can fetch the data here. Then you have spec.ts. This is to write your unit testing in case you are writing one. SCSS, where you can write your styles, and HTML, of course, you know what HTML does. So this is where you will be writing your template. Let's try to use this component. As I said, what we do when we create a component, we create an HTML tag. So this is the HTML tag app product, which I can use here. So let's put it here and let's go back. And you can see this product works. So product works is coming from product component.html. You can inspect this and you will be able to see which component name is this. So you can say, okay, app product. This is the component name, right? So this is the HTML tag which is created. And let's go and let me just make it responsive. Yeah. Right. So we understood that, okay, how you can create a new component, what is a component, and how you can use that component in our Angular application. So whenever you create a new component, either you will access it via a route, or you will just add it here in your app component.html to display that data. Right now, we are not going to see routing. If we get some time, probably I will do that. And let's move ahead. So now we have this product, and let's show some information on our view. Right now, we just have a template, right? I mean, HTML, some bunch of HTMLs which we are showing right now. So let's say I have a product name, and let's say product name is 1+70. And I want to display this information. Right now, it's of course coming from a TS file, and we will binding it on HTML. This is not coming from an API, which we will be doing later. To display this information, you can actually go to your HTML, use this interpolation syntax. This is known as interpolation, double curly brackets. This is interpolation syntax, and just do this, and you have your product available here, your product name available here, 1+70. So this is how your binding works. So this is interpolation. There are multiple ways. We will talk about all those ways. There is another way, which is which actually uses the same syntax as of HTML tags. So I'm sure many of you know that HTML has some properties, right? So let's talk about div. So I'm sure this code might be something which you might have used in case you have used JavaScript. So you do document dot get element by ID. Let's say if um, there is a div, right? So I can say get element by ID that access that div dot inner HTML. I'm sure you may have seen this particular syntax in case you went through some documentation. So what we are doing here is we are trying to figure out, okay, there is an element which has an ID called div, and that div has a property called inner HTML, and I'm binding this data to that particular property. So this thing can be done in Angular by using a simple syntax. Let me show you how. I can use div. Similar to the inner HTML, it also has a property called inner text, and I can say name. But this box is something which is different. It is an Angular specific syntax. So in Angular, you can actually use any valid property of your HTML tag to bind the data. So here, this inner text is a valid property. Of course, we know about the HTML properties. In case you are not aware of the HTML properties, of course, go to MDN docs and read about what are the properties which is available, because many of the times you can avoid the complex logic by just using the property binding syntax. So this is interpolation. So let me just write it here. It says interpolation, and this is property binding. And yeah, let's save this. So you can see you have the same value, of course, available, but here it's div, and here it's just like your text which is available. So you can choose whichever syntax which fits your requirement, and then you can use it. Now, once you have the data on your front end, what else you need to do? You may need to add some buttons, or you may want your user to interact with your application. So how your user will interact, probably is by submitting some buttons. In case you have drop downs, he will select the values. Those are the things, right? So actually, in when it comes to front end, we call them as events. So users will be raising, or your application, not user, but your front end application will be raising some events. So let's see how you can do event binding, where you can raise an event and capture it inside your TypeScript file. So to do this, let's add a button. And I'll say this is button, and I'll come back to the syntax, and I'll create a button and have a function called toggle. So what this button is going to do is it will show and hide this particular div. Here, I'll create this function toggle. And to show height, I'll create one more property. So I'll say this is height, and I will say this is false by default. So this is default value. And to toggle, we can say this dot height equals to not this dot height. And if it is true, make it false. If it is false, make it true. So let's try to understand the event binding syntax now. So in JavaScript, you have events like on click, on double click, on change, something like this. So whatever event you want to handle, just remove on. So here, for example, click. So you can just remove on, make it inside. This is banana syntax and say C and small c. So all the events, same as JavaScript, just remove on and put a banana syntax. So this is how you will be defining your events inside Angular. So now, whenever you do or you perform a click action, this toggle function will be triggered and it will change the value of height. Let's try to use this value. So I'll use another property of div, and this property is, I think, available with almost every HTML tag which exists, which is known as hidden. So I can say, okay, hidden is equals to height. Let's go back and I'll close this, and you can see click me. You can see this particular div is actually hidden, and then once you click back, of course it comes back. So here, if you see or inspect the element, you will find once you use click me, this particular element is still there. Just we are just adding hidden property to it based on the true or false value. So if it is true, of course the value will be added. If it is false, the value will be removed. You can always remove this and see how your element looks like. So delete, enter, and you can see your values back. Click me in, and you can toggle the value. So right now we learned about three basic syntax which you need to understand, with very important for understanding the template, how template engine works of Angular. So you have two ways: property binding or interpolation to bind the data. In case you want to interact or you want to perform some things on some user action, you have to do what you have to do is you have to do event binding. So you can call a function, trigger some event, and do whatever you want to do on that particular action. So here we are saying, okay, whenever I click this toggle button, I need to show or hide this particular div. This is the basics of template engine which you need to understand. So let's go back and talk about the one of the most important feature, which is the selling point for Angular, which is known as dependency injection. And to understand this, what we will do is we will use it, of course, and we will use one of the service, built-in service, which is available in Angular to fetch the data from the backend. Let's first try to understand what dependency injection does. Whenever you work on a large application, right? large enterprise application. What you will try to do is you will try to split up your logic across multiple files. What if I tell you that, okay, if you don't use dependency injection, you will end up a file with like probably 3000 of lines of code. Of course, that will be not readable. It will won't be easy to maintain. It won't be easy to refactor in long term. So by using dependency injection, the concept of dependency injection, you can split up your logic into multiple files. In general, we call it as services, and Angular you also call it as a service. So what you can do is you can create a service, move your usable logic into that particular service, and then you can use that particular code across your application. And in Angular, there are multiple types of services which exist. We will be using one, which is class-based service. So to create a class-based service, we actually, let's do it for product. And we will say open an integrated terminal. To create a service, you can say NgRx, and I'll call it as a product service. S is short for service. And you can see this file is created for you. You don't have to do anything else. And it has a class, right? And it has some provided in, you don't have to worry about it right now. And a constructor. So let's write a function here. I'll say get products. And let's return some data. And to do this, I'll do one more thing. I'll create an interface. So to create an interface, I'll say, okay, this is product.ts. Let's do interface. And I'll say, okay, ID, name, price, and I'll have description. Okay, so let's say this interface has these 4 properties, and this will be type of products array, and let's create a few more records. Okay, so we created some dummy records here, and what it is cannot find product because we need to import. I'll let VS Code fix it. So let's say this is our reusable code, or this is our service, which we like, where we have removed our logic, how to get the data from the component. So component doesn't know anything about from where my data is going to come. So this way you will actually end up with having less code into your component. So you will have an application which is easy to scale, which is easy to maintain and easy to refactor as well. And in case I want to use this, I have to use it here like this. So you can say private, and you'll have say product service. This is an instance. You can, or this is a variable name. You can choose it whatever you want, and then your class name. So product service. Why this syntax, right? So let's try to understand what dependency injection is. This is the syntax for injecting a dependency. But what dependency injection means, I mean, of course, we are not aware, right? So dependency injection is one of the design pattern which exists, and it's available in almost every programming language. Go to .NET, it is available. Go to Java, it is available. But for front end, it is not. For front end, Angular has it from the day one. So they have implemented this particular thing from day one, and they have it built in. So you don't need anything extra to use this particular feature. What in case I don't want to use dependency injection? So let me just show you the older way, how you create an instance of a class, right? So I can say, let's remove this right now, comment this. And to create a new instance, I'm sure most of you know how to create a new instance of a class. So this is how you do it. So you can say, okay, a variable name, equals to new class name. This is how you create an instance. Then why we are doing this? Why we are doing dependency injection? Remember, a class may have a constructor parameter in future. So let's say this particular class depends on another class. So for example, I'll just use something known as which we are going to use. So I'll say HTTP. Okay. Right now it's not. It's. I mean, it is giving error. But let's go back to our this code, because this is what I wanted to show you. So you can see there is an error. Why? Because this particular component expects that, okay, to create a new instance of this particular class, I need one parameter. So you need to pass that parameter. What in case I have used this class or this particular service in 10 different components? So I have to go ahead and update this particular component at all those 10 places. With the concept of dependency injection, let's remove this. Angular says, just use the service. I will check if this particular instance can be created or not. So in case I try to use it right now, you will get this error. So let's save this, and you will get this error at compile time. In case this particular service is available, Angular will not complain. It will create the instance for you. So this is an advantage of using the dependency injection. And you can inject a service anywhere you want to. So only services can be injected. Only classes can be injected. So, or you can say only services, classes, or there are a few more things. So let's not talk about it. But yeah, so you can inject a class here. So now let's go ahead and try to use the APIs. So because we had to learn the concept of API, concept of dependency injection before doing this, because we are going to use one built-in service which is available inside Angular, and that particular service is known as HTTP client. To use this functionality, there is one prerequisite we have to do. So the prerequisite is we have to go ahead and add here, we have to add HTTP client module. So this is a built-in functionality which is available, and let's import from Angular /common/HTTP. So this particular package, which is of course provided by Angular, you don't have to go anywhere else. You can import it from here, Angular common HTTP, and you have to say, okay, I need the HTTP client related functionality. So first step which we will do is we will include HTTP client module into your app module. Now next step, I'll go to HTTP product service, and I will use HTTP client. So let's import HTTP client from Angular common HTTP. And now let's make an API call, and we will be using get call to get the data from the API. So as we said, we'll be using JSON placeholder. So let's go to JSON placeholder, and we will be using, let's use posts. Okay. So this is the endpoint from where I need to get the data. So HTTP has different methods, right? I'm sure most of you are already aware of what API means, right? So you can get the data, you can post the data. There are multiple verbs which exist: get, post, put, delete, options, JSON pre, and put, attach, right? So these are different verbs which exist, or different actions you can perform on an API. So this one is a get call. So to get the data, let's see how we'll do it. Let's go back to product service, and I'll say this is get posts. And okay, so let's see this. You will be using HTTP and HTTP service which exists. And as soon as you press dot, you will get the list of options or list of methods which you can perform an API. So it has get, post, request, JSON, put, delete, patch whatever we discussed, right? So all this. So right now we are saying, okay, we have a get action, and this is the API endpoint. So we need to get the data from here. So step one done. Sorry, this is step two, right? So first we is injecting HTTP module, then we are using HTTP client, and let's try to get the data from this particular component. So every component has some lifecycle hooks. I'm not going to get into more detail about lifecycle hooks, but here there is an lifecycle hook called ng-on-init, where you can perform any operation which you need to perform as soon as your components are available or components are initialized. So here we can get the products. So I'll inject this. We already have injected the service. So I'll say this dot product service dot get post service dot get post. Let's see. And console.log, see what we what is the data we are getting, right? So just do that, because we will see something else which is happening here, and you need to understand it before we move ahead. So here, let me zoom in. So you can see product component line number 17, where we have this console log. Rather than getting data, we are getting something called observable operator source. What is this? We were expecting data. We are expecting this record which is available here, right? So this whatever 100 records which is available here is this is what we are expecting, but we got something else. How is this possible? So Angular uses an library called RxJS internally. So RxJS is a library to work with streams. So when you work with Angular, the data which you get from HTTP is not an object, it's a stream of data. What do you mean by stream? Streams are like some data which is continuously coming to your application, or it is continuously flowing in your application. Some examples, let's say you have Netflix, Amazon, right? So what are they? They are streaming platforms where you can stream some data. What they are streaming? They are streaming videos, music. So those are the streams of data which you get. So Angular works on a similar concept by implementing RxJS inside it. It says, okay, whatever data you get is a stream, continuous stream of data. That's why, I mean, in case you want to work with WebSockets, it becomes really easy to work with WebSockets inside Angular, because it already understands streams. So here you got this. This right now what you have is a stream of data. So how to read it? How to read this data? So RxJS works on a concept of called publish and subscribe. So this particular service right now is publishing this data. Same, right? So if I go to any streaming platforms, Netflix, Amazon, what they do, they publish some content. To get that content, what you have to do, you have to subscribe. Similar concept, you can just understand or remember that whenever someone is publishing some streams, I have to go ahead and subscribe. So there is a method called subscribe which gives you access to the data. So now you can say, okay, console.log. This is a little bit difficult to understand, but once you understand it, I mean, there's nothing like it. I mean, you will love working with Angular. Now you have the data available. So you have entire 100 records, which we can see on the API, and you have that data available here as well. So far what we did, we injected the HTTP client module, we made our HTTP call, get call, and then we subscribed to the stream, and we have the data available. Next step, of course, bind this data to our HTML, because that's the end result, right? That's the end result which you will show to your end customers. How to do that? Let's do that. Let's go ahead and see that. So here, the first thing which I will do is I'll create an interface. So I'll call this as posts.ts, and you can always refer to your interfaces or schema from here. So what are the properties which you need? User ID, ID, title, and body. So these are the export interface, and then I'll say this is post, and I'll say this is user ID, which is number, ID, which is again number, title, which is string, and body, which is again string. We defined our interface, and now let's go ahead and see, because we are using TypeScript, so it's better that you should always define the type for your data. Don't use any. I'm sure most of you know about any, but don't use it. And here I'll say, okay, this data will be type of posts array. There is a problem. So it says observable of object is missing following properties. We are saying that get post should return an array of posts, but while doing this return, it is giving an error because we have to typecast the response which is coming from our API. By default, whatever response you get, this HTTP service will treat them as an object. To typecast, you can do this and then say, okay, convert whatever result we are getting to the posts array. Let's see. Okay, sorry. Because this will be the observable of post. So I'll one more feature of TypeScript. It is whenever you return something from a function, it actually can infer the return type. So if you see this, so it is able to infer the return type. It says, okay, the response will be observable of posts array. And let's go back to the component, and it works. Let's create a post property here, or I can say post list, and which will be type of posts array equals to, I'll just put an empty array in case there is no value, and then I can do this dot post list is equals to data. Okay. So now my value is actually available in this object. Let's go back to the HTML, and to see the value I can of course use interpolation, but let's see what you get. So we used interpolation, and you can see we are getting something called object because it's an array. So you cannot use interpolation directly on an array. To see the values, you can actually use a pipe. This is known as pipe, and it will transform this data into JSON. So you can see what are the values here. So as this is an array, you cannot use interpolation. So Angular gives you a directive, inbuilt directive, or you can say inbuilt helper method to work with array objects. How you can display array or and data which is of type array. So generally you will use ULLI, you will use tables, right, or grids. So let's try to display this inside an table. So I'll say, okay, this is table, and first ER, which will contain my headers, and ph. So we have 4 properties right now. So I'll say, okay, this is th. Let's see all those properties: user ID, title, and body. So I'll say, okay, this is user ID, and this is ID, this is title, and this is body. And to display the records, and now what? Str should be generated dynamically. So we can use an helper method called ngFor is equals to. So you can say, okay, this is similar to for off loop which exists inside JavaScript. So you can say let each post of post list, and then you can just use your TDs. So let's do. And the advantage of writing the or creating the interfaces is you will get the IntelliSense itself here also. So you can say, okay, this is post dot user ID, then ID, and then title, and finally body. And let's go ahead and see how it looks like. So I'll just now remove this one. I'll just remove this one. and you can see your data is available inside a table. So what we did now, we completed the entire flow. We know how to include HTTP client module, which gives us access to a client service called HTTP client. By using HTTP client, we can actually connect to an API, get the data, and show the data inside your on your front end. And of course, you can just then style your HTML by using Bootstrap, Net, or whatever CSS framework you want to use, you can use that and style your data. So this is the basic, and this is how you can actually work with Angular, from template to getting your data from an API. So as I have still 10 minutes, let me just go ahead and talk about routing as well, how you can implement a routing. So to implement a routing, you can actually add, you have to do few steps. So we remember we added app routing module. So when it asked that would you like to add a routing module, we said yes. So this is where you can define your routes. So let's say we define a route for products. So we can say, okay, this is path product, and which component you want to show when someone actually visits this particular route. So I can say, okay, the component which needs to be accessed is product component. So this is the configuration which we did. Now on component.html, I can remove this, and you have to include something known as router outlet. And let's go ahead and see. So I can say 4200/product, and you will have your product view. Of course, you can put an anchor tag. You can put any. You can create a menu as well. I mean, by using Bootstrap or any other framework, you can also use Angular Material, which also gives you access to the menu bar. So that it has a component called menu, and you can actually use that component to build your entire menu bar using Angular Material itself. So this is how you can also add routing functionality to your application. So right now we did it for product. You can add more components, and then you can display it via route. So I think this is more than enough for a single day. I mean, I'm sure a lot of concepts to understand, a lot of concepts to grasp. So I will stop here. In case you have any questions, you can ask that, and that's it for the day.
So it was a really, really nice and concise and unorganized session. I hope students have learned a lot from this informative session. We do have a question. There's one question in the chat. It says we have to use Angular. React.js is more popular and user friendly. So why should we go with Angular?
So it's up to you, right? So whatever you feel comfortable with. So it's not like React is better, Angular is better, or who is better. It always depends upon, uh, I would say, what your organization needs,
Okay.
right? So for enterprises, a lot of enterprise choose Angular for a reason, because they want to shift faster. They want the team to be onboarded easily. They don't want to waste time teaching them how to do this stuff here, because if you go to React or Vue, there are 10 different ways to do stuff. So they have to actually have an onboarding session, teach them, okay, this is the standard we are following, and this is what we are doing here. And everyone writes their code in a different way. That's not Angular. In Angular, everyone has to agree, okay, this is the way we'll be doing it, this is the way which is already defined, and we'll be using this way. So it becomes more easy for enterprise applications. So if you want to know, I mean, Cisco, one of the biggest IT company, they use Angular. They have like uh, entire applications, entire stack in Angular. And there are a lot of startups which use React, because React is something which you can learn easily. You know JavaScript, of course. Probably you also know. I mean, you can easily work on React. So they need, uh, I would say, rather than actually shipping faster, they need developers who can come join the team and then start working from day one. Whether they write their code in a different way doesn't matter. They just need someone to write the code. So it differs from the organization to organization. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for this for the answer. Sir. And yes, this is the end of the session. Anything you would like to add, sir?
No, I mean, so only one thing: don't go behind whatever you hear on the social media. Of course, people will keep fighting for different frameworks with different library they use. A lot of people do it because they sell courses on it, and don't fall in that trap. Choose whatever you think is comfortable for you. If you think, and also look for the other factor, which is job, right? At the end of the day, you need a job. So see which technology or which framework has big market around whatever uh, wherever you live, or whatever specific location which you are targeting for. Let's say if you want to relocate to any other country, Canada, Germany, see which particular framework is famous there, which particular framework has more demand, and then try to understand or try to actually use that framework. Get your hands dirty and don't fall in the trap that okay, React is best and we should be only using React. There are developers you will find saying React is the last framework you want to understand or you want to learn. It's not like that. So it's up to you, and uh, feel free to actually explore. You have a lot of time. Most of you are probably students, so you have still some years with you. Go ahead and explore. If you think okay, this is not something which I want to don't want to do, choose something else. Like there are many more options. You have Svelte, you have Woo, you have of course Angular, React. Ionic framework is there. Ionic has its own different frameworks available. So there are a lot of choices, and every framework has jobs. So don't worry about it that okay, if you learn Woo, Svelte, you will not get job. It's not like that. Every framework has job. It's just the people who glorify some frameworks or technologies on social media. So don't fall in that trap.
Okay, thanks a lot, sir. And we'll be in touch with you for future events like these.
Sure,
Uh,
sure. No problem.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
So we'll be conducting more such events. So stay tuned. Bye, guys.
Bye bye.